Hey, on this episode, we're interviewing Jon Loree from the band Tantric. What's up, buddy?
What's up? What's up? What's up?
So actually, before we were talking or got on, you said you were watching football. Do you have a favorite team?
Cowboys. Which I wasn't
Oh
watching the Cowboys because
gosh, dude.
they
Come
slayed it. They
on.
slayed it on Thanksgiving Day, and the Giants.
Yeah,
Man, and I'm from Jersey, right? So
gotcha.
growing up, I was always ridiculed for loving the Dallas Cowboys, and growing up, it was always that Sunday night game, the Cowboys would get beaten because it was right around the
I
time
wish
that
that was the case.
yeah, right around the time, like the Giants were crushing it every season. They had Eli, they were doing really well. And so every time that would happen, I'd walk into school the next day and everybody knew, that me and my brothers were Cowboys fans, and that was
Oh
just it.
man,
The
so it was rough.
ridicule.
So you had it the roughest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
That
a
sucks.
Bengals fan, and he's actually a Broncos fan.
Yeah, I'm a
We're
Broncos
in
fan.
Ohio. Is actually where we're.
Oh, you guys can't hate that much then. I
Yeah,
mean, come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Like I could see if you guys were, I mean, it's not the Redskins anymore, but like I could see if you guys were Redskins fans or Giants or Eagles, then I'd go, okay, yeah, we've got some beef here. But come on, Broncos, like we get beef like once a season.
I
That's
know.
about
I do.
it.
I'm just not a Cowboys fan. It's
Yeah.
just I never have been. There's a lot of players like they're good players, but I choose not to like them.
You know what? It's hard to be on top and be America's team. I get it.
That's what my
Everybody,
grandpa called them too. Yeah, Americans
yeah,
team because they were around before a lot of other teams too. Like the Bengals
yeah.
weren't around, and the
Mhm.
Cowboys.
I'm just tired of hearing about them making it to the Super Bowl every year and then them flopping in the playoffs.
Oh yeah. Well,
He
listen,
is
I
too. I'm
know.
sure.
It's been a lifelong struggle. It's that sort of thing that they are just they never can seem to pull it off. Once the playoffs hit, they can't pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, they choke. It's
Yeah,
the
they choke.
quarterbacks they get. Dak Prescott chokes under big games. Tony
Yeah.
Romo, he choked under the big games.
Hmm.
It's just they're great quarterbacks.
Aikman was money
Yeah,
though.
Yeah.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
just
Aikman was on top. That whole '90s team. Emmett Smith. They were just they had the great wall of the Dallas Cowboys as that front line, that offensive line, and nothing could
Yeah.
get past them. So it's like now they've get it's just Jerry Jones buying the most expensive player, the guy that beat them last year, sort of thing. And then they'll get that guy, and then he'll suck because now he's making big money, so he doesn't care, And so I get it. I get the hate. Trust me.
he
So
understands.
so where does your musical journey start? Like when did you start playing drums or
Uh,
have an interest in
long,
music?
long time, but I started playing when I was around 11, and so this might make you want to this might make you want to hang up this podcast right now. But
Oh, not at
depending
all.
on where you land, but I started as like a huge Nickelback fan. That was my
My
go.
man.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
you're
right,
good.
so,
You're
all
good.
right.
You're good.
Good. So it started off as this, like, the one of the first albums I ever had was All the Right Reasons, right? And
Hmm.
that was right around 2005 or so. And I just loved the record. I thought, like, we would listen to it all the time. I'm a triplet, by the way. So me and my brothers grew up playing music together.
A
And that's how
triplet.
that all started
Wow.
was it stemmed from Nickelback, right? And so
Hmm.
our first concert we ever went to was Nickelback, that sort of thing. And so we just loved it. And everybody, out of me and my brothers, they both picked guitar, right? So they were like, "Oh yeah, we want to be guitar players," and I was left with the drums, and I was like, "Oh, cool." Like I wasn't really thrilled about it, and I wasn't really
I
excited
think
to.
drums are awesome.
Yeah, I wasn't, but at the time, I wasn't excited to be a drummer. I wasn't. You know how every kid, you talk to certain drummers out there, and they have that story of like the mom will say, "Oh yeah, he used to drum on everything when he was in diapers. He used to like hit on pots and pans and do all that." I don't
Right,
have
right,
that story. I never grew up with that story.
right.
So I came at it almost as like a uh it was the last instrument to choose from. So I was just left with playing the drums. And so from there, I just grew, a huge passion for it. And absolutely loved playing, loved it was I grew up after Nickelback, started to transition into like classic rock stuff. So that's where I found Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and all these fantastic drummers from the early 70s, mid 70s. And I was like, damn, okay, this is like the stuff I've been missing out on. And then you get a little bit older, like Metallica starts creeping in and all the heavier influences creep in. And so that's where I started to, really take a liking to the drums. And so that journey kind of landed me a bunch of gigs and a bunch of different projects and things. And then eventually you make your way into Tantric or whatever.
Right.
Which is crazy. That had to be a wild ride, like to be able to get to a band, that you're in now. Like what did that feel like when you became part of that band? Like such a big band. It's not just some small town local. What was that feeling like?
It was very cool. Like, so back in the day, I was in a band called Triple Addiction, and that was me and my brothers, right? And we used to open up for Tantric, playing shows in our local New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York circuit. And so the getting the gig landed because of the drummer before me, Ian Karabi, was leaving because the band tours a lot. We do, tons of shows a year. And so Ian has two twin girls, and he found himself not being home a lot. So he passed the gig down to me, and that feeling of like, okay, I'm not
passing the torch.
Yeah,
that's the mantle, man. Yeah.
I'm not doing the ticket sale thing anymore like we were doing, which was a big part of the local scene out here. You have to meet a certain ticket requirement for your shows. And, to be in something that's a little bit more established with a little bit more credibility. It's not the Tops, right? We're not like, the Rolling Stones or whatever. And we're not, even to the point of like bands like Hinder or whatever. But it's that sort of next step up. And feels great. It's got that. The guys are great that I hang out with. Our crew is fantastic. So couldn't have asked for a better step in the right direction.
But at the same time, you dismembered a band that you and your brothers had formed. I mean, that
you still play with them? Do you still play with your brothers? I'm sure you do. I mean,
they're my brothers, right? So they're always around. Like I just got back hanging out with them, so it's not like the band
right.
And then we were all like, all right, see you never. It was this change, but they knew. My one brother had just got married in August. So his dream was always being like a sports journalist. It was never really the music thing. At a certain point, he reached high school and he started getting more into sports and that. My other brother, he's still very much into music, but not to the extent of making it a career right now. So it kind of came at the perfect time where I needed that next step in a different direction, and they needed their respective steps in another direction as well. But we did a record, as the three of us, that was all self-made, self-produced, self-written, anything that you could think of, from the PR to the rollout, the music videos, all of it was ourselves. So having that background in it, it was more like I was able to take that and now apply it to the national band that I was in. So I wouldn't think of it as like a breaking up of something, more just a transition into something else in my life.
Fair enough. That's a good way to explain it, for sure.
Oh yeah, man. So what's the like the best tour experience you've had so far being with Tantric? I know I've looked at like some of your posts, like the like 54 show, or was it 48 shows or something like that, 54 vehicles or soming like that, or something like that.
We've had
sounds like you guys get it.
It's been an interesting year. We had a bus accident back in September of 2021, and so that kind of landed us in this weird position of not having a vehicle for a while. And the money is always money in, money out. It's a weird spot to be in. So to make the shows happen, it costs money. It's not just like we make a certain amount and then all of a sudden you're just like set and you're like, oh, I've got like billions of dollars to buy a new vehicle, right? So
Right.
it was always this like it was always this thing of like playing catch up for a while. And so we never really got settled into a new vehicle. And whatever vehicles, we had gotten were just like breaking down. So it was like bad luck touring for the past year or so. So that was that post was the 48 vehicles, 50 something shows. It was all about that. And it was, we would rent cars and things. We would we would take personal vehicles to shows, just to make sure that things happened and moved. So yeah, that's very interesting there. But as far as like best tour experience or any of that, there's been a lot. We meet a lot of really cool bands. We did a run back in February with Hinder, and growing up, if you like Nickelback, chances are you're gonna like Hinder too.
Right.
And so we did a really cool tour with Hinder, a little tiny. It was like a 4-show mini run with them, and they're great guys. We've done shows with Scott Stapp, and his crew is really great. I'm trying to think of like who else we got off with. We did Smile Empty Soul over the summer, for like all of August, and those two guys, Sean and Ty, are very, very cool, and great guys to just when you go on tour, it's like this is already a stressful situation as is. That hour that we get of playing the show is the best part, but the travel and getting there and the booking of the rooms and those things, a lot of that's stress. It's just you got to get to the venue on time at like 3:00, but it's 8 hours away and you just got off stage at 2. So now it's time to like make up time that doesn't exist, so it's like right. So it's like, okay, so we can sleep for 6 hours and then get a jump on this ride, so that way we can make sure that we're there. And most of the time you end up late anyway because something happened, so it's like, but to be on tour with two cool guys like Sean and Ty, and then we were out with this band called Silver Tongue as well. They were a part of the group too. And Ra was in there for a minute as well. So we had like a really cool lineup of these bands. It was funny because we we called the tour the Loss of All Things tour, because it was Smile has just come out with a record called The Loss of Everything, and we had just come out with an album called The Sum of All Things. So our bass player had the genius idea of putting them together to be the loss of all things, but didn't realize that threw us for the whole tour. Because every single band had a vehicle problem. Every single band had something going on, like gear.
He did some voodoo shit when he said that, huh?
Yeah. We were just
major
like
curse.
We were like, yeah, we should have really thought that one through a little bit more, but we didn't. And so yeah, that was the thing. It was such a bummer, but no, it was great overall though. Those are like the tour experiences that you'll come home and people ask like, what happened, how was it, what'd you do? And when you bring up some of the stuff that goes on, they're like, no way. No way.
I can only imagine.
Dude,
that's great.
Yeah, I can imagine some of the things like you guys go through trying to just get places, get everything set up like that.
Yeah, nobody, and that's the thing, like nobody parties or anything like that. We're not this like, everybody assumes that you're like
rock bands party and
that it's
you're
like,
on tour.
Yeah, you're on tour, like, oh my gosh, like that's got to be so cool, like let's party after the show. And we're like, no, we gotta get to bed like as soon as possible, so that way nobody's mad tomorrow. It's like it's that sort of thing. Is people, I think, just
it's not what everybody makes it cracked up to be.
Yeah, but they also assume that you like appear in their city like through osmosis or whatever. Like, like you just we ended up going from LA to Portland, and it just like we just appeared. Like, like no, we had
teleportation.
Yeah,
have you kept track of miles? Like the miles you traveled? Have you actually kept track of them?
it's funny. There's a post out there that Jess, our merch girl, did, and she has a map of like her house in
Mm-hmm.
Ohio and where it stems from there. Somebody's got the mileage somewhere, and I'm sure it's our booking agent or somebody. But the amount of miles in just the summer, we were going from Ohio to Wisconsin to Indiana, but then to South Dakota, Colorado, Nebraska, then ended up somewhere like Montana, like, everywhere that you could think of. And then ended up back in Ohio, back then Pennsylvania. We had one routing where it was us going from Ohio to Pennsylvania, which it's not just, everybody assumes, oh, Ohio, it's right next to Pennsylvania. That's right next door.
So
That's only
far drive.
It's like an hour, right? And it's like, oh, like if you're coming from, Dayton area, having to drive all the way across Ohio to get into Pennsylvania a ways, it's like a long drive. It was like 7 hours. And then we had to drive back from that one Pennsylvania show to CVG to fly out and go to Texas for like an acoustic set, and then fly back the day just to drive. Me and my bass player drove from CVG all the way back to like Jersey to get back home. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with.
It's fucked on a traveling, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you like those acoustic shows? Do you like doing?
Yeah, we only do one, and it's very rare. It's like, this was because, it was somebody's birthday party down in Texas. Big fan. They had us and Kevin from Candlebox and Brian, and they came out and did a set, and we did a set. And it was only because it worked out, and it just fit. But other than that, it's like, no, we don't do. We do acoustic meet and greet sets. That's like a thing that we do, but it's usually just Hugo singing. Somebody will chime in with harmonies or whatever, but we don't do the acoustic thing very much. Everybody, it's like, if it's not worth it, then there's no acoustic gonna happen. Everybody wants to crank it to 10 all the
time. It's understandable.
What was it like meeting like Hugo? Because it seemed like you liked some of the bands that played with Tantric back in the day, when they first kind of arrived on the scene. What was it like meeting and playing with Hugo the first
It's
time?
funny because I met him well before I joined, and it was me and my brothers again opening up for him. And I remember going outside and going, "Hey man, great set." And he was just sitting down. He's like, "Yeah, hey, thanks." And that was it. Like, that was. And then I told him that like years later, when I joined, I was like, we've met like before. And he's like, "Oh man, you must have thought I was a dick." And I was like,
just a little bit.
No, but Hugo's great. He's got stories like you wouldn't believe. It's just 21, almost 22 years of just touring and writing and recording and doing that. He's had no day job, so his job has always been music, and that's just, it blows my mind. So to hear his stories and his approach on things is very funny. And his, he's just he's one of the most charismatic people that I know. And he's just got, like, when it comes to music, he's a killer piano player, if you didn't know. He shreds piano, and he also has like, his guitar tuning is also in like what would make sense to a piano player. He tunes his guitar. I forget all the notes, but I went to school for music theory, so to then talk to Hugo about music theory, it's like, oh man, we like relate on this certain level, this like intellectual musical level, or whatever you want to call it. So loved meeting Hugo, and the past two and a half years of just hanging with Hugo has been awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, he's a real down to earth guy. Ray from Misfit Productions. He was talking to him, and he kind of his daughter at the time was like 5 years old, and Hugo was like playing with his daughter like after the concert and was like giving her care, and he just seemed like a real down to earth guy. It's for
Mhm.
somebody like you said that's
which
been
is
that
so
many years on
cool.
the road is really cool. Really cool to
Yeah,
see.
he does put a lot into the fans when they're around. He'll take the time. He doesn't have this um, this rock star mentality thing, this ego that gets in the way. For the most part, he's like, after the show, he's hanging out with people.
That ego that gets in the way ruins so many good bands, and you see it happen time and time again.
For sure, for sure, you see that a lot, and it really like that's the issue with lifting the veil, right? And you see the musician of most of the time you're wanting to meet your favorite bands, but it's almost sometimes better to not
Right,
because
yeah.
then that veil is lifted and you're like, ooh, I don't really like that guy, and it's like
Yeah,
I
changes your opinion on them.
yeah, I've had those bands where you talk to them and you're like, never mind. I can go without listening to your music. I used to be a
Jeez.
big fan, but now I'm not. And I won't name names just to
Right,
keep
yeah,
it,
yeah. Oh yeah,
but
would expect you to.
that's sort of the thing is like, if somebody's a jerk, there's no reason to be a jerk in general, life in general. But
Right, for
um
sure.
when it comes to, music especially, it's like somebody's going out of their way to buy your record, come to your
Mhm.
concert, buy a t-shirt. There are certain songs that people cling to because of how much of an impact it's had in their life, good, bad, indifferent. And it's like, to then be a jerk, you're like, it just ruins it, really ruins it.
Right. That's one thing I've seen from you, like with social media stuff. It seems like you're a really down to earth guy, and
Yeah,
and
down to earth,
seems
super
like
positive.
you
I
are you
watched
still
all your videos.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, are you still involved in like teaching? It seems like you that's part of your passion, teaching drums.
Yep. Yeah. So I still teach. I teach like usually 4 days a week.
Does
And
that get frustrating? That has to get frustrating.
what, like teaching in general?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll say this. I'll say this. Love teaching, and
Hmm.
all of my students right now that I have are really good. There are kids
Hmm.
where I'll tell the parents, after a couple of lessons, like he's just mentally, he or she's just not cut out for it. Like it's just
Right.
they don't want to. You're just telling them they need to pick something. So like a kid will pick something that they can hit because it's like, oh well, this isn't hard at all, right?
I
It's
couldn't
like
play drums to save my life.
everybody says that though, but you'd be surprised with the right teacher. So for only, da, 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 99, you could be. But I
Hand-eye
will say
coordination's not there.
everybody says that though, and I thought so too. And I was like, I always thought that like that first hurdle that you have to get over to make your right foot, your left hand, and your right hand work together. That's a
Mhm.
really hard hurdle to get over it. But once you do, it's like, oh, this is way easier than I thought. It's just you got to get over like this pretty big hurdle first, and then
Yeah, pretty big. I got little legs.
yeah, trust me, you have no idea how short I am, and you'd be surprised. So, but I love to teach, and back to what you were asking is there are certain times where yeah, it does get to be a lot, and you're like they're not practicing, they're not doing this, but for the
Mhm.
most part, I find what works. I teach a lot of special needs students, and
Oh, that's
that
awesome.
I kind of just stumbled into it. It wasn't ever like this passion thing, like
Mhm.
a lot of people will have, but I kind of stumbled into it because the place that I work at, All Star Music Empire in Flemington, out here in Jersey, we're one of the only music schools that
Mhm.
is certified from the government to teach special needs music lessons.
It's awesome.
Um, so
Yeah.
I was kind of like, because of working there, I was thrown into it. And
Mhm.
after I started teaching them, I was like, they have a way bigger passion for music than like you or I could ever imagine,
Right.
so I teach a lot of special needs kids, and I find what works for them, but even with everyone else, I find what works for them too. So it's like, if somebody's like I've got one kid who's just already a brain. Like he's 6 years old and he knows what, like, you get subdivisions in music and he already knows what 128 plus 128 is to get to 256 at 6 years old. And I'm like, how do you know that for a 6 year old? But he's just, smart. So for
Gifted,
him,
yeah.
I can show him like sheet music and he gets it. Whereas another 6 year old that I have, he is just off the walls. So I have to reel him in with something is a little bit more in his wheelhouse. So you just got to find what works. People that have like a specific core regimen for how you teach drums, they're not doing it right because everybody's different. Everybody learns different. So you can't say
Sure.
that because this works for one kid, it's going to work for everybody. Everybody has to learn in their very specific way.
Oh yeah, man. Sounds like
That's
you're made
fair.
for it. That's cool. It's really
Yeah.
cool. You tailor it to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
So I mean, being in a band, obviously the drummer's always in the back. What's it like being in a band and not being like almost like the face? You know what I mean? When you think of a band, most of the time it's like the singer, the lead guitar player. What's it like being? It's kind of not a great question, but what's it like being not like the front face of the band?
It's less stress, I'm sure. No, I
He's
mean,
the heartbeat, though. He's the heartbeat.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I always loved I like being the front guy. Like I like being that in a certain respect. So like if you ever watch my drumming live, it's like pretty flashy
Mhm.
for what it is. There is a certain aspect of being in the spotlight that is cool, not in an ego way, but I want people to enjoy what I'm doing back there. I don't want to be in the
Right.
Right, for sure.
and like have no light on me at all because then it's just me playing and not like there's a difference between playing and performing, right? And performing
A
is
hundred
very
percent.
you're there to play the song well, of course, but you're also there to make people feel something, to feel engaged to your show. So I feel like that part of me, I'm not totally in the dark in a band like Tantric, but to not
Right.
be totally in the spotlight, I also like too because I'm there to very much support the song. And so, these songs dating back 20 years, people don't want to hear Jon Loree's interpretation
They want to
of
hear yours.
no, I'm saying that they want to hear the breakdown as they know it.
Yeah.
So I'll put my little flavor on it, like every musician does. But for the
Sure.
most part, it's like to the record. Like I studied Matt Tall, the original drummer. I studied a lot of his work on those first two records because of how one, how out of the box his thinking was.
Mhm.
But two, it's like that's what people want to hear. They're coming to a tantric show and they want to hear breakdown as they heard it 20 years ago. They don't want to
Right.
hear,
Right.
me go and do my own thing. And there is a difference like with the three guys that are the musicians of the band, me, Sebastian, and Jaron. We all come from heavier metal backgrounds.
Mhm.
Um, where like Sebastian's dad was in the band Cinderella, so that it's
Right.
very 80s influenced, and so
Mhm.
you'll
Right.
hear that more intense version of these songs live, but it's not that we're taking away from the originals. Like the original is still very much there, so
Right.
finding
Right.
that big deal.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen you guys live videos and live in the last couple years, and
Right.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you definitely do it justice for sure. For sure.
I definitely think when like if there's a really good drummer in a band, like that's kind of where my eyes go, just because
Mhm.
the motion, they're constantly always doing something. So like when you have a drummer that's boring and just kind of sits there and just like you said, sits in the dark and doesn't make the show, it's harder for me to get into that. Whereas like if I can sit there and watch a really good drummer, I get
Mhm.
excited about it. I'm like, holy shit, this guy can do this. It's
Yeah,
nice. I mean, definitely that's where my eyes get drawn to, especially during a concert.
yeah,
Because I
for
mean, the
sure.
singer and the guitar players, they can only do so much. But when you're sitting there watching the drummer in the back doing all kinds of different things, just sitting down,
Mhm.
it's wild.
Yeah, it is very much everybody. Like going back to what you were saying is I just don't have the coordination to drum, and I feel like a lot of people watch a drummer because of that fact that most of the population can't drum or don't drum. Maybe not can't's not the word, but like
Right.
don't. Right? So to watch a drummer do something that's a little bit more, like unobtainable to the audience, it's pretty neat. The other thing to touch on what you were saying is I love watching drummers that are animated, right? Even if it's
Mm.
just facial features, they look like they're
Yeah.
smiling, having a good
Yeah.
time. That gets me way more than the guy that's like this
Sitting there
stone.
with a straight face the whole time. Oh,
Mhm.
dude, that
Now,
drives me nuts.
I'll say this, and I hate to say it, it's almost blasphemous as a drummer, but Neil Peart is not one of my favorite drummers from Rush because of his stone-faced, very stoic
Yeah, it's lack of animation.
attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I didn't get into it because it almost felt robotic, and that's what he was going for, right? He's trying to be
Mm.
as possible, and totally understand that. But his face just didn't show enough emotion, or
It
his
didn't look like he was enjoying it.
yeah, and I'm sure he was. Obviously, he was. And
Yeah.
Right.
I still love. There's a lot of Neil Peart licks that I've studied and looked at, and I was like, damn, like this, that he can obviously play. But I always got drawn to drummers that would keep something so simple but have
Mm.
so much taste on it. Like I just did this clinic with Bernard Purdy last week on Sunday, and he's a guy that he's made it famous off of one groove. I mean, and a handful of platinum recordings, but like his claim to fame is this one groove, the Purdy Shuffle, and to
Mhm.
watch him do that for like he did this clinic for like an hour and just like talked about that groove and his approach to simplistic drumming. I'm like, man, like that was so much more captivating to me than some guy that would have gotten up there and did like the craziest amount of flashy fast rolls down the kit.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, the spectrum of drummers too, very very different.
Right.
Who is your favorite? You say like
Yeah,
never isn't your favorite. Who would be your favorite drummer?
that's tough. That's tough. That's like who's your favorite kid? It's like, but I love John Bonham. Once I found Bonham, that was like kind of it. And I was like, he's just so tasteful for the time. And it was stuff that nobody had ever heard before.
Mhm.
That would be a guy that if I could go back in time and just sit down and talk to, would have loved to pick his brain about what he was doing, and why he approached drums. And it became a modern thing because of him. Like the way that we play drums nowadays is because of John Bonham. So it's like that sort of guy I'd love to sit down and talk to, but he would be number one influence. Bill Ward from Sabbath would be like number two. But a lot of modern guys I like. I love jazz. So Gene Krupa, if you date back to the early, 30s and 40s, he was fantastic. Um, I love Nate Smith as a newer jazz drummer. I don't want to say new, probably like somewhere in the 2000s he started to climb up. But Nate Smith is fantastic. There's rock guys like John Fred Young from Blackstone Cherry. He's fantastic. Barry Kirch from Shinedown. I always loved his playing. He's like as short as me, which we both connected on that level. So I was nice to know that there's short drummers out there. I love it.
How tall are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I stopped counting after it got depressing.
Because Aaron's actually also a shorter guy.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not very tall.
it's gotta be like 5'6", maybe. I
I'm
don't know.
5'5".
Yeah,
Probably around there. I'll say that I'm 5'5", but it's pretty funny.
you're drumming. I can't tell, man. You're big as hell when you drum. So
It's pretty funny when I get off stage, and it'll be funny because I'll like walk down to the crowd and hang out by the merch table, and one, people won't know that it's me, and two, they'll go like they'll look me up and down and go, it like sorry.
That's all that's there.
It didn't mean to be short. I can't do anything about that.
Oh, it's great. What's the most amount of gigs you've played in a year?
We did. I wish that I kept track, but we've done upwards of 150 to 200, that range in 1 year. So that's probably the most. Most bands will do 100 dates a year safely, with months off in between. So they'll
Right.
go for like a month and then have 2 months off, and then a month and then 2 months off. But we've done like upwards of 200 in a year.
That's a lot of time away
That's
from
getting it.
home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's getting it.
Yeah, yeah. It's what did somebody term us as? I think it was Wayne from Saliva was like, "You guys are just a bunch of land pirates," and that's been like that's been like
That's a great way to put it. That's so funny.
our guitar player Sebastian. He's got like a land pirate uh tattoo on his arm.
That's funny. Bunch of land pirates just drifting
Mm-hmm.
from place to place.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pillaging and whatever pirates do.
Now, when you were younger, did you ever see yourself getting this far in music?
No, no. Even if you go back, 5, 10 years ago, no, definitely. I mean, I always wanted to, and I even now, sitting here talking about it, I would love to go even further than this.
Right.
This is just the start of it. But I didn't think it would be now. I thought I'd be, 30s. I always told my girlfriend that if I didn't make it in 5 years, we're moving to Nashville and we're gonna, I'm gonna make it then, and that was kind of that was where my sights were set
Mhm.
originally. And then this came up and it kind of changed the trajectory a little bit. But even still, I didn't see this happening. I just knew it would always be something with drumming. So whether that was teaching or recording or just gigging, I was doing bar gigs like every single weekend, it out here. And I was like, well, you know what? If this is the extent that I get to, then I get to it. But I never settled in that respect. Never said, okay,
Mhm.
well, this is all I'm gonna try for. It was always that mentality of how do you make this work, even if the top of it for you isn't rock star whatever fame. It was more so like I've got buddies out here that gig every single weekend, do wedding gigs, do that sort of music thing, and they have houses and a comfortable living, and it's still music. It's just not what everybody thinks making it is.
Right.
Right.
So how's let's get personal here. How's touring affect your home life? Because if you're
Oh,
gone, if you're gone that much, I mean, it's definitely got to be affecting in a way it wasn't as in when you weren't touring all the time.
right.
How's that
Now,
change in your home life?
I I I don't think it's changed much. I think what's changed is how we work things. Like my girlfriend's very, very supportive of me, and
Yeah.
drives me to the airport at 4 in the morning to make sure I can get my flight at like
It's
5:30.
dedication.
Yeah, very, very. So it's like that is a big part of it, is the change in how we work.
Mhm.
It that, but you know, I think that it doesn't feel like much has changed. It's just different, like it's
Mhm.
um we yeah, at the time I was gone for, like in August, I was gone for a whole month, but we knew, coming back, everything would be kind of back to normal. And it kind of gives, I don't want to say it in a bad way, but it kind of gives you a break for a second. I was like, it, but it gives you something to miss. It gives
Oh
you
yeah, you
something,
miss her.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
it gives you something to come back to and go, oh, like, I definitely missed you. And I definitely
Right.
missed this time. And even with my family too, is that it was like, my brothers, I would come back, or my friends, or, my parents, and you come back and you're just like,
Mhm.
you got things to talk about now. You've got, things to now catch up on and do. So yeah, it has, everybody goes, oh, it's going to be so tough. And, you're going to miss people when you're gone. But it's funny because a lot of musicians will say this, the ones that are in my situation, is they love the road and they usually miss home while they're on the road. But then when they're at home, they're like, man, I miss touring. Like, I want to get back out there. Like, I've been home for like a week or about 2 weeks now. And like, I'm like, oh, can't wait to get back out. Like, I love playing, but then
Yeah.
when I'm on the road, I'm like, okay, all right, only 3 more shows and then I'm back,
You're getting the best of both worlds.
It's it's just a weird push and pull. It's something that not a lot of people experience, right? It's just, it's this weird thing. So
yeah, because I was definitely curious. I was like, man, I couldn't imagine living a life like where you're gone that much. And it's like, but I mean, having somebody that's taking you to the airport at 4 a.m, she's dedicated. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes the time that much more sweet.
Absolutely,
sure. Exactly.
So, do you have any upcoming things on the horizon for Tantric? Is there anything that you?
I'm hoping my singer Hugo's on a cruise right now. Lucky him. So he's doing that, living it up. Somebody put him on a cruise or something. So he's doing that, and he texted me. He's like, I want to, once we get back, it'll be like December or something. December 1st, he was saying, but he wants to come out and we're gonna maybe demo out some new songs. It was a while, still are shopping for record labels, but that navigation is a whole lot different nowadays than what it used to be. So we had one record label for the past record, but it was only for one album. And they really dropped the ball on the whole thing. The whole rollout of everything really dropped the ball. So shopping for a new label, but a new label wants to hear new songs too. So there'll be some sort of like demoing out, hopefully in this time off. And then we don't go back out on the road till like March. So we were hitting it hard for 2 years, burning up a lot of real estate, doing, a lot of shows in very similar places. If not, like there's this one bar in Ohio called the Blue Note in Harrison. And we played there like every 6 months in the past 2 years. Like, oh, there's the Blue Note again, back on the schedule. And it was always sick. It was always packed. I'm like, why are people still coming out? But they just loved it. I don't know why.
You had a hell of a show, apparently. Bring it back.
Yeah, it's always a good crowd. It depends on where we go. But Ohio's always been good for us. But yeah, then we kick it off in March, and then it's straight through to like July. So it's like a full 4 months, close to it, of just nonstop shows. So looking forward to that.
Are you looking forward to writing and demoing out too? I'm sure.
Yeah. And Hugo, we were sitting the last show that we did in Louisiana. We were sitting backstage, and he had his guitar out, and one of these things that he started playing, I was really grabbed to, and I was like, that's sick. That sounds like old school Tantric. And that's kind of hopefully the goal is, the modern sound of rock music is kind of dying out. And it's just become oversaturated. So it's kind of like, you need something different. And so hopefully this new record will kind of be a throwback vibe to the first 2 records. That's what I'm pushing for. I think that could really do big things as like a comeback if it's more in the vein of the first 2 records.
Yeah, all you gotta do, being different in today's music is definitely gonna grab a lot of attention. A lot of rock bands now, I mean, like you said, it's kind of all like the same thing. It's falling flat. Everybody's like, yeah, this is it. So I personally like listening, to rock, but like different versions. Like I like older rock, I like newer rock, I like the modern stuff. But nobody now plays a whole lot of the older styles anymore.
Yeah, and I think what's really coming back is like the alternative thing. Like I'm getting students of mine, and I can really gauge it. What's great is I have this insight into the younger generation that now like I feel old, right? And so I this insight into this younger generation they're coming into the lesson room going like, I want to play Nirvana. And I'm like, you weren't even like around
Yeah, you weren't even thought of.
right. Like, they're like 12, 13, and they want to play Nirvana. And it's so like Nirvana is not really one of my favorite bands, but what's sick is that they want to listen to stuff that's real and authentic again. And
Right.
things that are doctored up and fake. And so what you've had in rock music is a lot of that. And that won't go away. Like there are these bands that have come out that are still sick, like, Shinedown's been around for a while, and they've been kind of playing this modern twist on rock music, kind of
Yeah,
towards
it's been the same version of rock since they've come out. It's been the same
yeah.
style.
It's that, and it's all kind of due to Nickelback, right? Because every record label, it's true though. Every record label takes a band, right, and they see that there's some success there. And usually it's a bunch of labels have passed up this band for years, right? So Nickelback had a story, passed up. Nobody wanted them. Nobody wanted them. Somebody finally took a chance on them and said, we want you. And they end up being the number one selling band in 2001, right? And then every record label after that goes, oh crap, like we should have picked them up. And then they just create these satellite bands that revolve around a nickel style. So the past 20 years, that's what we've had bands that are similar to a Nickelback. So you get the bands like Shinedown or Theory of a Dead Man, all good bands in their own respect. They've all done something with that sound. Yeah. But it's now to a point where it's almost stale, and the shelf life is kind of going away. So now, even with like in regards to a new Tantric record, what would be sick is to go back to that first sound. Because that's what the kids are almost listening to nowadays. It's funny, we'll get kids at our shows that are like, way younger than the music and go, yeah, love this, love Breakdown, love Morning, whatever, and they want to listen to stuff that sounds real and authentic again. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year.
Right.
I'm excited to hear it and to see what comes next.
For sure. I mean, you definitely nailed the whole Nickelback thing. I mean, they recently just dropped a new album, and it don't sound anything different than what they've done over the last 20 years. So
I will say, and that's the thing, it might be my bias, about a band like them because of how much of an influence it had over my life. I generally think that if you love a band, genuinely love a band, you'll kind of follow them through their, arches.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like, so many people take like what was their favorite band and go, oh, but they suck. They used to be way better back in the day. And it's like, nobody goes out of their way to make a terrible album, right? Like no band goes into the studio and goes, how can we anger all of our fans today?
Right.
So it's like nobody does that. So to go and actively say, they used to be better back in the day, this was better. It's like, no, they're just trying to change with the times like anybody else would.
Right. You have to.
Yeah, evolve. Everybody has to evolve. Yeah.
With regards to the newest album, there is a lot of just like, okay, yeah, this is just Nickelback. It sounds like Nickelback, but they took a little artistic liberty.
Oh, they did. They for sure did. But you can, no matter whether it's the drums, the guitar, or the vocals, no matter what song it is, you can tell it's Nickelback.
Yeah,
it's move those away and be like, okay, it's just the drummer. This is for sure Nickelback. You can just tell by the way they play.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Once you hit a certain formula, right, then you just like keep using that formula. That's what he does.
It works for them.
He's written songs for Keith Urban. He's written songs for Tim McGraw, for Avril Lavigne. He's, Chad Kroger's a monster writer. So it's like people want access to that formula because obviously it works. You don't sell a diamond album because you suck. It's like, no, there's a formula that works, And
the sad thing is everybody will sit there and talk about how bad Nickelback is, but if you put in one of their albums, at some point they're going to be singing to their song. It doesn't matter who's in the car. It doesn't matter who's around. They're going to sing no matter how bad they say they hate Nickelback.
It's always the case. That's the thing is I'll get people that go, oh, well, I don't like Photograph. That song's cheesy and campy and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, Fair. I love Photograph, but what I will say is you should listen to this, and then you put on like the heaviest Nickelback song, or like the most, depending on your audience, right? The most heart wrenching song, or whatever, one of their best ballads, and then people will go, oh, okay, now I see it. So it's like everybody says they hate them, but they don't. It's like
there's always
it can't be true. How they sell My Enemy records if everybody hated them?
Yeah. Yep. And it's always these guys. It's like guys and girls that just kind of like they're coming out of their like hut. They're like little rock. They're sheltered. Like you'll go like, yeah, I like Nickelback and like you today on this thing, Eric. Like, yeah, I like Nickelback too. It's like you don't want to admit it. You don't want to say like
there's absolutely nothing wrong with Nickelback.
yeah. You're scared to bring it up, but then once that floodgate opens and you see people that are like-minded about the band, you're like, oh, okay. It's fun. They did a show not too long ago, like it was a week ago, last Friday at a small venue near me. They did 3 shows, and one of them was at one of our venues here. And I don't know why. It's just like a small 1,000-cap room. And they sold it out in like 4 minutes. and you're like, well, everybody can't hate Nickelback.
Right. It's like everybody's closeted Nickelback fans. It's kind of
exactly.
It's like, yeah. I grew up with them. I mean, I remember first time I heard how you remind me. I mean, they were a good band. I loved them back then, and I mean, every band has their ups and downs. I mean,
of course.
Musical growth and
everybody has their haters. So I mean, obviously, you've experienced your end of haters towards the band. What's that like getting, just douchebags?
Yeah, it's like we're not at the highest level to the point where you get all of this hate. Usually we get a lot of positivity, a lot of people that have stuck around for 20 years.
Right.
We'll get a lot of people that have stuck around and have seen different iterations of the band and say very nice things of like, you guys are the best sound that the band has ever had, or, the best drummer that the band has had, the best bass player that the band has ever had. When people say that, it's coming from a real genuine place, and this is people that have been around it for 20 years. The worst that hate that we ever get, it's usually people that are saying like, oh, well, this doesn't sound like this guy from the original lineup.
That's because it's not that guy,
right? And it's like you can't help that people moved on and did a different thing. And so as long as we're doing songs justice and we're not trashing on them, then there should be no hate. But generally, honestly, I haven't seen any hate, and I have the Instagram and the Facebook page for the band, so I see the comments all the time, and usually they're all very positive things.
That's good.
That's awesome. This time it's good. This time, I mean, from what you hear out there.
Now I'll say this: my one buddy that does he's blown up on like TikTok and YouTube. His name's Billy Wilkins, and I drum for him too when I'm not doing the tantric stuff. And he's got a really big following that he's kind of developed since COVID. Since COVID hit, we all had to like find different things to do. And his thing was like singing for strangers, where he gets on Omegle or Chat Roulette or one of those things. Mm-hmm. And he's got his guitar plugged into an interface and his microphone, and he's doing the people will request a song and he'll sing it, and they're blown away because he sounds great and shreds and whatever. And he gets more hate because he's in the newer, younger generation market, whereas Tantric's in a very older demographic where there's not really people that are going to come and go out of their way to hate on Tantric, right? People will go out of their way to hate on my buddy Billy because he's doing a cover of a newer song that's not in the style of what they know it as or whatever. So, and kids have learned to hide behind their screens too. So, that's kind of the thing. The older generation is more, I'll say it to your face. And the younger generation is more, I'll just say it online and then just like log out. You won't see me again.
Yeah. Keyboard tough guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard his stuff. Yeah, I've seen on TikTok. He does really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do some drumming for him? You said as well.
Yeah, yeah. Him and I get together. We'll do the videos together. We write together. We used to do shows all the time together. That was one of the bands that we would play like every weekend, and we'd be doing these like crappy bar gigs, just trying to scrape together like a couple $100 to just make some money at it.
Right,
And
right.
we were always thinking like, man, like you're like he's gonna get there one day. He's gonna do it. Like we know it. Like he's good. And then now to see him where he's at, and he's doing like some really big things on TikTok and YouTube. It's like, wow, he's starting to make it. So we're hoping for with Tantric, doing all of our things, but with Billy as well. That's another big thing is to get his ball rolling a little bit more, and start, getting some songs written and because he hasn't really released a whole lot of songs since like 2020, I think was his last song. So we're hoping that this year get some new songs under his belt and hopefully get on tour next year.
Oh yeah. I guess that's kind of leads me into, is there anything you wanna plug? Um like your projects, friend projects, tantric things coming up. So,
No, Tantric, Billy Wilkins, those are the two places you'll find me. Me and my guitar player Sebastian Labar have some really cool songs in the works and things of that nature. But you can find me on Instagram at John's Drum Studio and Facebook Jon Loree, Jon, by the way, because everybody writes it wrong. But you'll find me there, and I'm always posting ridiculous content all the time. So if anybody needs to hit me up for anything, I'm always around.
oh yeah, man, I
Oh
appreciate you
yeah,
coming on. I really do.
For sure, you
for
guys.
sure.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Yep, definitely.